and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. Thank you for joining me today here on TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at MediaOps, and I'm here with the Monday edition of the Webinars Preview. We have a lot of really great webinars coming up, both on DevOps.com and on Security Boulevard, but I thought I'd go ahead and focus on three specifically that are coming up on DevOps.com in the next few days. Hopefully we can get you guys there. All right, the first one I want to let you know about is called Fitting SAP into a DevOps World. This one is happening tomorrow, Tuesday, September 22nd at 9 a.m. Eastern. DevOps Unbound is one of our shows on TechStrong TV, and this webinar is actually a DevOps Unbound roundtable event. So we've got 6 panelists on this one, which is being moderated by Alan Schimmel, and they're going to talk about really what's needed to help make SAP successful and an integral part of the DevOps culture and CI/CD pipeline. So definitely one worth checking out if your organization is working with SAP technology. The next webinar is coming up Tuesday, September 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern. This one is also on DevOps.com. It's called The New Security Perimeter, Protecting Identities and Endpoints in the Remote Work Age. This is another one that's being moderated by Alan Schimmel, and this one is actually being sponsored by JumpCloud. And it's a live panel discussion and Q&A session, basically talking about the future of security and user productivity. And they're going to offer up some real advice to help evaluate and elevate any organization's security posture. So with remote work being such a thing now these days because of the pandemic, this webinar is definitely one you want to check out. Make sure your security posture is as it should be within your organization. All right, the third one I want to let you know about that's happening this week is Wednesday, September 23rd. It's called Bridging Operations and Development with Observability. It's happening at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. It's being sponsored by Datadog. And this webinar talks about how introducing monitoring and observability earlier in the software development lifecycle can help provide greater visibility for both developers and operations. And we'll also offer up some strategies to segment development and production environments with Datadog. So if you've had any issues with operations and development and observability, this is one webinar you don't want to miss. All right, that is all that I have for you today, but I'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Webinars Preview. So until then, please stay safe.
Thanks, Charlene. That was great. Okay, that means it's now time for the Analyst Corner with Mitchell Ashley, with some great video, excuse me, and commentary. Mitchell, over to you.
Welcome to Analyst Corner. Mitch Ashley, CEO with Accelerated Strategies Group. Well, the week is here. Finally, I've done a lot of work coming into the DevOps World 2020 conference that kicks off tomorrow on Tuesday. So I hope that you've registered. The speakers are fantastic, and I'm not saying that just because I'm one, but there's some awesome speakers. And of course, I'm really excited about the leadership track that has this year that Accelerated Strategies is the chair of, and actually the program chair for the content. So a lot of hard work has gone into kind of selecting the best of the best. And yeah, it's a conference that's interesting because it is put on by CloudBees, but it's not a vendor-specific conference. They do their best to make it kind of vendor neutral, approachable by all parties. And, there's no vendor pitches. I don't get to make a pitch there for Accelerated Strategies, just like CloudBees doesn't make their own pitch there. Yeah, they're present, of course. Their executives are talking about kind of their product and where they're headed in the future, but that's also Jenkins and its roots and how that shows up in the product today and where they're going, I'm sure, is some of what they'll be talking about. So I have a couple of panels. There's going to be an open source panel, and Alan Schimmel of Media Ops, and Tracy Miranda, who is now with the Continuous Delivery Foundation. She's joining us to talk about sort of the ins and outs and what's happening in the world of open source. And then we have a Show Me the Ugly Dogs panel, which is, we always get to see the cute puppies at conferences, right? Folks want to show what they've done and done well and been successful at. And what about those failures that are necessary to do great things? You know, you may have heard me talk before, but nothing great ever happened without failure. And that includes Apollo 13, right? They didn't get those astronauts down to Earth without failing. I mean, I'm not talking about the initial explosion that happened. I'm talking about all the ideas they tried, both to put in the CO2 scrubbers, but also how to power back up the command module from them being in the LEM. So, you know, that was hundreds, maybe 1,000 or more different ideas, probably hundreds of failed ideas before they eventually found what worked, you know, and that was a tough problem. Tough problems don't happen in one try. They happen in a whole bunch of failures followed by some successes, because all of those failures either show you what path not to go down or help illuminate a path to take forward. So I hope that you enjoy the conference this week. Of course, I'm going to be talking about the state of software delivery management, the report that we issued a little over a month or so ago. That'll be a big topic. That's what my keynote talk is about. And, you know, it'll be a topic of, I'm doing a panel with, I believe it's with the press on Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday, I believe it is. Talking with a number of different folks, some customers of CloudBees, and also some of my experiences through the report and in the analysis process. And due credit goes, this is work that was done by Sanjeev Sharma, who's now an advisor to Accelerated Strategies. So he's now at Truist, managing the integration of their DevOps and cloud infrastructure. No small job. You know, those acquisitions, they always sound good, but man, there's a lot of work to kind of integrate things when you do that. I don't always do that, but so I hope you join us. If you haven't registered, there's still time, and this is going to be very heavily attended. I don't know exactly what the registration numbers are, but I know they are very high. So we're going to have a lot of folks there because of the great speakers and the great content that are happening. So please join us at DevOps World 2020. Now, I've hinted at some new research that's coming out, and that will be coming out tomorrow on Tuesday, the 22nd, the day that DevOps World starts. So stay tuned. It's some really great stuff, and I think you'll really like the way we're presenting our content and information, things that we discern from the research. So it's very timely as well. So check that out. Keep an ear out, keep an eye out, and we'll be releasing that very soon. Take care.
Hiring great DevOps and cyber talent is a huge challenge for technical teams. Cloud transformation is driving demand higher. You've tried doing it yourself. Job boards, LinkedIn, didn't work. Recruiters are an option, but who do you trust and not waste your time and money? RecruitOps is the new way to source engineering talent. From Media Ops, the people behind DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and more. We sit right in the middle of the hottest positions in Dev, Sec, and Ops, and the brightest minds in the field. If you're looking for a great position or the talent to fill it, we can help you. Trust us, risk-free.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Well, I'm joined by a couple of really good folks here talking about security, which is, of course, one of my favorite topics. Joined by Robert Kracek, who is Global Identity Access Management Strategies with One Identity, and Babar Amin, who's CTO West of Ping Identity. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate the invite.
You bet.
Robert.
Hi, Babar. So, Robert, why don't you introduce yourself? You know, folks probably know One Identity, but let's just introduce yourself, tell a little bit about what you do and a little bit about One Identity, and then Babar, you can follow right along and do the same for Ping Identity.
Sure thing. So One Identity has been in the market space for a while in the identity and security products space. We have a number of different products, particularly identity governance, privileged access management, and Active Directory management with our Active Roles product. I've actually been with the company about 8 years. Prior to that, I worked for Dell. Prior to that, for Novell. And in my early years, I was a data security specialist in the military. So I've pretty much been doing this for nearly 30 years. It's been a heck of a journey. Some things are still the same, and some things have changed quite a bit.
Problems just get more complex, I think. What a great place to start. So many great folks started in the military or in the government. So cool. Bobber, how about yourself?
Yeah, so this is Bobber Amin. I am CTO West for Ping Identity. Ping Identity is first and foremost, identity company, and we help customers operationalize their identity and access controls. And that means everything from proofing, identification, authentication, access control, transactional security, data security, API security, and all of that path that you normally take is where Ping plays, and we do that based on both static and AI-based approaches, so that we can stay ahead of any ongoing threats and providing with MFA and other stuff. My role right now is basically helping Ping around their zero trust strategy, and looking at working with large customers to see how they can leverage what they have, and how they can craft their security strategy in a manner that will help them move forward and at the same time stay secure. And then I also specialize in our privacy and healthcare and kind of all that's open banking or API-based open transfer of information across different areas.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you both. And Bobber's joining us by video or by audio only, just to make sure we had good quality. Video wasn't quite there today. So, well, let's talk about, you both had an announcement, some kind of co-opetition, to reuse that phrase. It was popular for a while, an announcement earlier this summer. Tell us about what that was, and then we kind of check in where things are at and how it's going.
Yeah, I'll take that one, Mitch. So One Identity had and is retiring an access management product. So when you say co-opetition, there's really very little overlap that we have today versus a pure play IAM product vendor like Ping Identity. So back at tail end of 2018, we sat down as a leadership team and decided, what's our direction? What are we going to hyper focus on? Are there some products that are a little bit outside of our safe zone, so to speak? And one of them was our access management product. And when we took a look at some of the vendors in the space, we've been collecting over the years feedback on what type of integrations, what type of cooperation do our customers want with our products, with an access management product, and with other vendors as well. And Ping always comes up as a vendor that we need to work with to satisfy customer requirements. And also, it made sense since we were retiring our access management product to look at those vendors like Ping and some of the others to see how we could work with them to develop solutions, or at least create out-of-the-box solutions for our customers to make it easier for them to use both sets of products.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Anything you want to add to that, Bobber?
No, I think that was a very good explanation, and I do want to echo that there's actually in fact, zero competition. It's a good partnership and collaboration, because we like I said, we solve everything from identification, authentication, and access, but there's a whole other area of providing entitlements and providing a governance model around who has access to what. So it's a very synergistic approach.
Excellent, excellent. So let's talk a little bit about sort of what gap does this fill in the market? You both obviously have your own individual capabilities, but by coming together, what is the need or the gap that you're uniquely filling now because of your partnership?
Sure. So yeah, that's a great question, because there's a lot of vendors in both spaces, right? So where's the uniqueness? From our perspective, One Identity, because we have not only identity governance product and a privileged access management product, we can already deliver those two functions from one vendor to a potential customer out of the box. But what really, in my opinion, what offers uniqueness from a ping identity perspective is our IGA solution is Docker containerized. So it plays very well in a DevOps type of play. And Ping has focused on DevOps for 2-3 years now. They have a lot of architecture on it. I've worked with their sales engineers on labs that are completely in Azure or completely in Amazon. And I think what offers uniqueness for us is, for the partnership from my perspective, is the MSP model, to being a partner and being able to deliver an IGA solution and Ping solutions through an MSP and very quickly and easily without a lot of re-architecting and development, I think is uniqueness. As well as the fact that we have unique capabilities around open standards in our product sets that Ping also supports, like SCIM and OAuth and SAML, and I think it's just a really good synergy.
Mm-hmm. So say a little bit about what IGA is for those that don't know.
Sure. So identity governance is essentially the practice of taking your identity and putting a wrapper around it that ensures people get access to the right things and they're validated appropriately, and there's reporting and auditing, and you can track all these separate identities through a single source. So there's different levels. If you look at maturity models in the past, you have the basic levels of provisioning and deprovisioning. But, at the higher end, the more visionary customers are looking at how can I track things from an analytical perspective? How can I govern multiple identities that are tied to an individual? How can I provide that granular control so that when my access management product like Ping One is stood up, they're getting the appropriate applications at the appropriate time?
It's interesting how that identity management and governance has gone from, of course, the deep use of people, users, but also now into software, into devices, into the whole interconnected world that we're all a part of. So it's more complex, but it's good that we're kind of extending those practices to the interconnectedness of what we operate in and the services and software and solutions we provide.
Yeah, like we said earlier before the recording started, some things change and some things remain the same. So
yes. I think there's a good song by Led Zeppelin or something like that. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But so Bobber, you were trying to jump in there.
No, I was just going to add to that, from our perspective, the making the customer whole and helping them achieve their vision and getting them to operationalize and put their security practices in practice, or their security products in practice is first and foremost. So, as customers are using IGA capability from One Identity, it made good sense for us to make sure that we work together with One Identity to service those customers. And for us, that is front and center for everything that we look at, is how is it that our customers are using, and how can we help them advance their state of security.
I'm really curious. Thank you, Bob. I'm really curious too, not to make everything about COVID, but the economic conditions. have really accelerated a lot of digital transformation strategies, digital strategies, competitiveness, things around contact. The behaviors of customers are changing. It seems like everything is a bit disrupted at the moment. What are some of the biggest challenges around IGA and identity management that large enterprises especially are trying to tackle now that maybe weren't as top of the list as they were 6 or 12 months ago?
Sure, I'll take that one. Or Bobber, go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that, last year and probably maybe 6 months even prior to that, the whole concept of, zero trust had started to bubble up again. It's an old concept, but people were trying to pay a little bit more attention to it. And then, in the last 6 months, it basically has become front and center because it's more important than ever for people to make sure that their employees can get their jobs done in a manner that it doesn't, put them at risk from a data breach perspective, the company at risk, and all of that is bringing to notice that, look, you can't rely on security that is based on locality. You can't rely on security that is based on discrete events, right? You have to have a more dynamic approach and look at all the possible signals that you can get at any given time. And that is probably the one thing that COVID is bringing to light, that you can't continue to rely on static ways, static policies, and the old way of perimeter-based security and access.
Yeah, it really destroyed the concept of if there was a perimeter, which I'm not sure there was, but if there was a perimeter, you just can't assume anything about location where people are, controls that might be in place, because to work anywhere, whether it's now or in the future, if this continues in some way, that's part of our fabric of work, right?
Exactly. And you mentioned like a lot of security folks and data security folks came from the military background, and we've all heard the term, in the wire or within the wire,
under the wire,
Under the wire.
yeah, and it's that whole concept that once you were past the sentry checkpoint, it was okay. But what people don't realize is that even in those environments, there's a layered approach, right? You can't walk around, without proper identification, and you can't basically just go anywhere. So think of the same approach, really. The zero trust approach is really the same approach. It's just, at a logical, basically applying it in a logical fashion or at the logical layer.
Zero trust can be, I've heard some people talk about zero trust as you have to rethink everything. There's also the how do you build on what you have. What are your suggestions of folks? How are people tackling, getting serious and implementing at least aspects of zero trust approach?
Well, what I've seen is there's a lot more interest or reinvigorated interest in privilege access management and those secure accounts. We have a lot of administrators working from home that normally wouldn't. So there's been a lot of interest in injecting second factor, doing remote access. Like with our Safeguard product, we have a remote access component to it that allows you to do secure remote SSH, REP, that sort of thing. A lot more interest in that from on a larger scale. So say typically in the past, we would talk to a client and they would maybe want, 100 licenses of that, or just some depending on their size, obviously. We're seeing a significant volume increase in their requests for that because they're realizing, whoa, we have a lot more people with privileged accounts and privileged access at home now. How do we give them access so they can do their jobs? So, like Bobber said, way back in the day when I was in the military, we had layered control. I had a badge I had to go through a gate. There was a guy with a guard and a really big, a dog with a really big gun. And then I had to badge in again. And then I had a key code. And sometimes you had two-man control. So there was already zero trust in that model. And I think that for a customer, some people may have to reevaluate their whole mindset and how they control identities and how they manage that trust relationship within the organization. And others may be at a level where they just have to reevaluate what they have and maybe make some moderate changes to their policies. So flexibility is the key, but also you need to make sure that every part of that flexible policy is secure in some way. And that's where governance comes in, right? Because then you have multiple levels of approval points and step-up authentication or step-up reporting of different types of risk analytics and all sorts of things that you need to involve now. But yeah.
Are there areas that organizations are scrambling to catch up because of how quickly they had to go from maybe a few hundred licenses to now we need potentially thousands or more of employees with that capability? What are the areas that now we're there where we have so many people not working in inside the wire, if you will, that we've got to kind of step back and catch up or reinstitute some new things?
I think it's about authentication, like we're just talking about, right? So knowing that I call them the pseudo root user or the pseudo privileged user, right? So it wasn't just the user who needed, who was traditionally considered the privileged user, but the person who's working your accounts receivable or accounts payable or has access to your corporate, financial information. Those are all, they have some levels of privileges that now they're working from home. They're coming in from a, untested network. They're coming in possibly from an untested device. So how do you know who they are? How do you know what the endpoint is? How do you know the state of the endpoint? How do you know if that endpoint is properly patched? Right? Those are all considered different signals. And based on those signals, you can decide, do I want to ask them to, for a second factor? Do I want to introduce friction? So those are the new technologies, is basically bringing in more dynamic policies for access, because then that turns around and triggers either multi-factor or some other factors that some other mechanisms, or look for passive mechanisms like make a call out to find out if that particular endpoint is has the right reputation right in the wild. If that endpoint has been used in a bad in an attack or in some other activity in the past, because that assigns a different score to it. And if that person is trying to do a privileged operation, well, that's the risk. What are they trying to do? So they're trying to do something that has high risk with it. And the trust that they have at that particular time, might or might not be enough. So balancing that is really should be the new normal, and is really the new challenge.
So I've got you both here. I want to ask you a question. It may seem a little bit off the wall, but stick with me for a moment. In the software world, folks like Netflix and others have, employed techniques around chaos engineering, right? So you build things to be, protected, stable, et cetera, in their case, and then you introduce change to try to build in resiliency, sort of the unexpected. It almost seems like the security world is ready for their equivalent of that, which might be, we have done the perimeter, we've done the layers, we've done the locking down to prevent, traversing horizontally and vertically escalating. Now it almost seems like you were talking about the layers you had to go through, and the dog and the guard and the man trap and the air gap and all those things. Some of those things being introduced is there some chaos engineering that might be applicable to, the IGA or to the identity access market that could potentially help us with, we don't know the use case scenarios. They are not all discrete anymore. So you have to kind of plan on anything. What are your thoughts about that?
So
that's an interesting one.
You're talking about a system level resilience, right? So normally that kind of chaos engineering or that kind of testing or that kind of pushing the envelope is done at the overall system level. It's not done at a component level because a single component failure or a single component resilience is not enough to protect you, right? Even if you test every single component in its own entirety, right? When they all come together, you can introduce different pockets of vulnerability, and that's what we see is that the approach you just mentioned should really be manifested by the customers depending on their risk level, right? Because you wouldn't want a retail vendor to do the same level of introduction of that kind of activity and take the cost burden associated with that you might want your bank to do, or that you want the national command to do for launching missiles. So it's that is really relative to the risk associated with what they have and what they're trying to protect and what is at stake, and it should really be done at a system level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Barbara. I mean, I view these large networks as one big machine, and they have many, many moving parts. And a retail organization may have a secret research area that needs more rigid controls than, say, a consumer side of things. And banking, his example, I mean, they're down to the microsecond in transactions. I mean, they have to be, especially if they're doing trading and any kind of financial transactions where fractions and fractions of a cent make a difference. So, being disruptive, say like in an SOD violation checks and that sort of thing, we've seen it where people have tried to introduce those after the fact, after access has been granted, to try and put a wrapper around something that basically has been let out of the cage already, and it's been a huge disruptive, had a huge disruptive effect on the organization to the detriment of the organization. So you'd have to do things very, very carefully. But I think there is opportunity here, particularly in risk analytics, and just doing passive analysis of who has access to what and why they have access to it. This is a great opportunity to reevaluate your security practices and ensure that, if there's risk exposure, you can come up with a method to control it. So I would say the disruptiveness, right, for me, if I were back being an IT director, would be passive analysis to see where I can inject disruption in a positive manner for my business.
Mm-hmm. More on in a penetration sense or penetration.
That's right.
In the environment. Sure. That seems like where we are today with where chaos engineering is being applied the most. So, well, good. This has been and thank you for entertaining that question. I want to get your thoughts on it. What's happening next with the partnership? Kind of what do you see happening over the next, say, 6 months or so?
So that's a good question. So, I have, when we develop these partnerships, at least from the one identity perspective, I have in my mind, what we call phase 1 and phase 2, and however you want to say it. But the first opportunity I took once we established a TAP or technical alliance partnership was to evaluate our products and see where we could create out-of-the-box integrations to help our customers and our partners. Second phase, ideally, would be to work with the appropriate folks at Ping to develop some uniqueness. And that's hopefully in the future. Right now, we have at One Identity, we have at least a dozen integrations we're working on with Ping products to just make this partnership more than just a piece of paper. So next phase will be unique development, I hope.
Integrations are huge. It can save a lot of time for customers
to
go through the same process over and over. Yeah. Bob, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really identifying and identifying what other areas 1 + 1 can turn into something more than 2. So that's really the next step, is to identify and figure out where we can create a kind of a better model for customers to take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. I think just from my own experience, you both hit on kind of the two key ingredients is you have to find the things that you can uniquely do together, and it has to be valuable to both of you, both companies and their customers. And you get that engine rolling, it can be a very successful partnership. So I hope that that's what you achieve. Thanks, gentlemen. Be really good talking with you, and thanks for sharing kind of what's happening in the market and some of the challenges folks are taking on in zero trust and moving to that. So it's been great talking with Robert Krawczyk, who's Global IAM Strategies at One Identity, and Babar Amin, who's CTO West of Ping Identity. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you. Thank you.
Join topic experts and peers for a Splunk virtual event. Observability to enable your digital initiatives. Are your apps and services distributed in the cloud, getting refactored as microservices, or becoming more complex? If they are, you must factor in observability. Observability is all your data to help you find unexpected failure conditions, explain why they happen, and resolve them fast. This event is about the challenges, opportunities, and best practices to successfully build observability into everything you develop, deliver, or monitor. Register today.
That's going to make a wrap for today's show. Monday, September 21. Hey, guys, have a great week. It's out ahead of us. Let's make it count. We hope this week finds you happy and safe and well and strong. TechStrong. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.